Hey everybody, I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera show. You know, that Easter bunny's going to be hopping right around the corner here any day now. And I don't know whether you've decided what you're going to be doing that day for your meal preparation. I love a brunch. And people ask all the time, do you have any new brunch ideas? Well, I thought Easter might be the perfect time to introduce you to 3 recipes that I think are scrumptious for brunch. We're going to start with a savory basil cheesecake. You think you're eating dessert and it's savory. It is so good. Has a tomato chutney on the top. Then we're going to move into a pimento cheese grits casserole. One more thing to do with pimento cheese. You're going to love it. This is my recipe for pimento cheese. And then finally, a hummingbird layer cake. It's the tallest cake in the cookbook. You're going to love this recipe as well. And then in Vera's Corner today, we're going to go over 5 different things that you can do with the pimento cheese if you have any of that left over. So let's get started with that basil cheesecake. This is just a really interesting and good recipe. All right, so I got started early on. This is an 8-inch springform pan. So what I did was I sprayed it, put my parchment circle in, and sprayed it with pan spray. I've got Ritz crackers that have been ground really fine in the food processor, and then I added melted butter to that just to get the mixture nice and together so I could put it into the springform pan. You want to press it down with a spoon, and then I put it in the freezer and I let it sit for several hours. So I've also, did this ahead. I've pulled it out of the freezer, and now I'm going to be ready to put my filling in that. And it's just a great way to get this recipe presented in a very unusual manner to use a springform pan. Then the next thing I did was I got my filling prepared. Fresh basil, there could not be an aroma that I love any more than that, not to mention the fact that this cheesecake is going to be topped with a tomato chutney, and so basil and tomato just go great together. So I chopped up the basil in the food processor, and it just, you've got a light mixture. You want to just grind it until you can still see it. You don't want it to get pasty, but just grind it with a pulse feature on your food processor. Then I added in my garlic, minced garlic, and mayonnaise, and I pulsed that together. So now I'm ready to add the other ingredients to this. We've got shaved Parmesan, and I love to do my cheeses by hand. There's just something about it. Gets you really into what you're doing. All right, then we've got ricotta cheese. And that's going to really make this creamy and good. And I don't know about you, but this recipe really interested me several years ago when I was looking for things to do for cocktail parties that were different. So brunch is great. This would be a great appetizer at a cocktail party. And then finally, blue cheese crumbles. So we're going to just blend this together. And it just makes kind of a little bit of a chunky consistency on this. So there you have it. All right. So let's get this into this springform pan. And the thing about it is that, you find out that there are other things that you can do with pans that you use for one thing. I can remember when we used to look for ways to serve chicken salad differently. So I started using my butt pan for chicken salad. All right, so now we're just going to put this delicious filling right into the pan and spread this around. This is going to get refrigerated for a couple of hours. And when we come back from the break, we're going to get started on that pimento cheese grits casserole. Does that sound scrumptious or not? So y'all come back with me in just a few minutes and I'll be ready to go. Welcome back, everybody, and if you're just joining me, we're doing an Easter brunch today. These are recipes that are great for brunch in the spring or summer, or especially next weekend if you're having friends and family over for Easter. I hope that you'll try these recipes. They're always available on our website at VeryVera.com. So the savory basil cheesecake is in the refrigerator. I kind of licked my finger. Oh my goodness, the flavor in that is really incredible. And then you'll find out at the end about the tomato chutney that goes on top. And now we're ready to start on the pimento cheese grits casserole. You can't get more southern than pimento cheese and grits. And in this particular instance, this is my recipe for pimento cheese. Everybody has a twist on it, but the two things that really make my recipe, I think, unusual is I always hand grate my cheese. And I always use Cracker Barrel extra sharp cheddar to make it. You know, it has a really nice balance of sharpness. It just holds together really well. And hand grating will keep those ingredients to be able to get into that cheese and really make this flavorful. The other part, the secret, is the Tony Savory seasoning that goes into this recipe. I've been using it for years and years. All right, so we've got the cheese grated. The next thing we do is the peppers that go in this recipe. So my grandmother used to put the red pepper over the gas stove and actually char it to death. She just stood there until the whole thing was black, then put it in a paper bag and let it sweat, and then just pulled that char off. But if you're in too big of a hurry to do that, you can certainly buy this in the store. It's usually where the olives and that sort of thing are in the grocery store. The next thing after that was cut those into strips, and then you want to pat them dry on a paper towel just to get that excess liquid out. Mix the mayonnaise and the peppers and the cayenne pepper into the bowl. Just mix those together, get those combined really well. And then again, add the Tony Savory's and stir. And so that just really comes together. It makes quite a bit. And in Vera's Corner today, I'm going to give you some tips on what else you can do with that pimento cheese when you have some left over. All right, so now I am ready to get started on the actual grits part. So what we did in advance was I got my chicken stock, brought that to a full boil, and then I added in the grits. Just stir for a few minutes, let it come back to a boil, and then put the lid on your skillet and let it cook for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then remove it from the heat. So that's basically where I am at this point, ready to go with that. So now I'm going to add in my pimento cheese and my butter, and I went ahead and cubed that so it would melt together well. And this is the part that I just think makes this so yummy, is just mixing this together and combining. And you see how those large chunks of roasted pepper just show up so well in this. You know, the kids are going to love this too. So this is really a good recipe. All right, so now I'm going to add milk, because you want it to be a little bit loose because you're going to bake it. Add that in. And there's so many different grits that you can use for this too. These are quick grits, not regular grits. So now I've got eggs that have been beaten softly. And because this is not too piping hot, the eggs are not going to cook. All right, so let's mix that together. All right, and then nothing would be better with this than bacon. Of course, bacon, that aroma, everybody wants to smell that when they walk in the house. So now I just went ahead and just cooked that in my skillet, chop it ahead, and then I drained that on the paper towels to get the excess off, the excess fat off of that. All right, and let's put in a little bit more Tony Savory's just to add that little bit of kick that they're so noted for. And I've prepared my casserole dish by spraying it. So we're just gonna put this in, and this is gonna go into a 350-degree oven for about 30 minutes. And as I said, in Vera's Corner today, we're going to talk about what else to do with this pimento cheese. And then when we come back, how does hummingbird cake for dessert sound? Pretty yummy. So y'all come back with me in just a minute. Okay, let's just say you made a big batch of pimento cheese and you have some left over. Well, let me give you some tips today on what to do with that leftover pimento cheese. Use pimento cheese in place of sliced cheese on your burger for a cheeseburger upgrade. To make pimento cheese deviled eggs, add about 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise and a ½ cup of pimento cheese to the yolks of 6 hard-cooked eggs. Mix well and pipe or spoon the filling into the egg whites, top with a slice of pickled okra. Dress up a regular baked potato with pimento cheese and bacon, and you've got a decadent, cheesy baked potato. Make pimento cheese the center of attention at your party with a pimento cheese ball. Combine 12 ounces of pimento cheese with 8 ounces of cream cheese at room temperature. Chill for about an hour, then form into a ball. Roll in chopped pecans or the garnish of your choice. Finally, nothing beats going in a container of pimento cheese with a cracker for a delicious and quick snack. Try your hand at these pimento cheese variations using my original VeryVera recipe from the VeryVera cookbook. Welcome back, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed those tips in Vera's Corner about pimento cheese. You know, sometimes you have to do something real quick, and maybe that'll come in really handy. All right, the hummingbird layer cake, one of my absolute favorites. I love the picture in the cookbook of this cake with the hummingbird feeder and the hummingbird that happened to show up during filming that day. It was just amazing. But this is the tallest cake in the book, named after the smallest bird on earth. So it's really kind of unusual, but it's very flavorful. It's really considered a fall cake because of the cinnamon and the nuts, but I just think hummingbirds come out in the spring, so it would be perfect for an Easter brunch situation. So I hope you'll try this. So I went ahead and greased my 4 9-inch layer cake pans. I put the parchment paper in and just used my baker's joy, so those are all ready to go. Then I had the oil in the mixer. So you beat the sugar, the oil, and your freshly cut ripe bananas and put that into the bowl and mix that really well in a stand mixer for about 3 minutes. Then you want to scrape the sides. Put in your eggs one at a time and just take a minute to make sure that they're incorporated well as you do that. And then use your vanilla next, and again, use a really good brand of vanilla when you do this because that flavor really comes out. Then in a separate bowl, you want to whisk your cake flour, baking soda, salt, and cinnamon. Use a whisk or just a fork just to incorporate that mixture really well. And then I love to use a 1/3 cup measuring cup when I am adding into my mixer. It just makes it go really well, and it doesn't have flour going all over the kitchen. You want to beat that for about 7 minutes on medium speed. So that's what I've done here, and you can see in the bowl that the little bubbles from the baking soda are coming up. So I'm going to take this off, and now I'm going to add in my crushed pineapple and my chopped pecans. So you've got a lot of batter here. So if you don't have 4 cake pans, the other thing you could do would be to make this a 3-layer cake and have some muffins on the side, maybe little cupcakes with this. But you never want to overfill your cake pans. So take note of where this batter is going to be when I start adding it in to these cake pans. All right, so I guess I've been doing this for a long time, so I kind of know where to go with it, but just add a little bit, and then you can come back and even it out. And those parchment circles, if you don't have parchment, You can also use wax paper. Just take the pan and trace it with a pencil and then cut it. So let me get the rest of this out. So I made this recipe is actually on page 100 in the cookbook. And I always remember it, it's really the one in my book that opens up really quickly, and it's because the cream cheese icing that goes on this cake is used on many of our layer cakes. So you turn back to page 100 to get that icing recipe when you're making another cake. Okay, that looks pretty even. So you see I'm about 3/4 of an inch from the top of the pan. All right. So these are going to go into a 325-degree oven for about 35 to 40 minutes. So let's talk about icing the cake. The layers get chilled overnight. Then you take a cardboard circle or even the dish that you're going to put it on, put a little bit of icing on the bottom. Then you're going to just start adding your layers. And if the layers seem to have had a little bulk on the top, just take a knife and cut off that so you've got an even layer. So start with the first layer. You're going to add about a half a cup of icing. Add that, spread that around, then add your other layers. Then the sides are next, and again, you're just covering up the crumbs, so you're not trying to cover up the layers. Then a little bit on the top. Let that chill until it's good and cold. Then you're going to do the decorative layer. This is your swirl that goes on the side, the big blob of icing on the top that turns into a flower, and then you chill it just to get it good and set. All right, so come back with me in just a few minutes. We're going to get this set up for Easter and show you what things look like, and maybe I might get to taste a little bit today. So come back with me in just a few minutes. Well, I guess all I need now is my Easter bonnet because we are ready for this Easter brunch. And you know, as I said earlier, these are just great recipes, whether it's something new for a cocktail party, a brunch, a luncheon, all kinds of things. But they're just great recipes to have handy. And just remember our website, VeryVera.com. If you're looking for something unusual to serve, we hope you'll check that out and look for a recipe that maybe you can try for the very first time. All right, so let's walk back through what we did today. I've really had a lot of fun with this episode. So the Savory Basil Cheesecake is just gorgeous on this wooden cake stand. It came out of the springform pan beautifully, and that's why you use a springform pan, because you can unlatch it. It just came out. The parchment paper then allowed me to just lift that and slide it onto the cake stand with no problem whatsoever. And now the garnish. The garnish, we've got some slivered almonds that you see on the top and some chives, but what about that gorgeous tomato chutney? Well, let me tell you quickly how we made that. So this uses diced canned tomatoes, and you don't drain them. You put those in a saucepan and you bring it to a good hard boil. Then you add in light brown sugar, granulated sugar, chopped green pepper, chopped onion, a jiggerful of Tabasco sauce, and black pepper. Bring that to a boil and then turn it down, and you're going to let it simmer for 2 hours, basically just reducing that so you've got a really great chutney. So keep this recipe in mind if you're ever cooking a pork tenderloin. It would be fantastic. All right, now what about the Parmesan pimento cheese grits casserole? All right, so that's finished. It's got some green onions on the top. I'm just going to scoop up a spoonful of this so you can see how creamy and delicious this is. So this is a great recipe. Also would be wonderful with ham for dinner one night, but I just think this would be a great thing to add, and you found out other things that you could do with pimento cheese today. And then the Hummingbird layer cake. Did I tell you it was the tallest cake in the book? So you see the 4 layers there. The way you know that these are done, and again, I cooked this on convection today in my M-series oven. But if you don't have a convection oven, you can rotate the pans halfway through, and the way you know it's done is to just put your finger on the top when the timer goes off. If it springs back, the cake is done. I iced this, it's just turned out beautifully, and doesn't it slice nice on this little bunny plate? So this is left over from the children when they were little, but I hang on to things like this for presentation. All right, so presentation to me is everything. And the wreath that you used to hang on the door that might look a little ratty now for Easter is great for a presentation under a cake stand. And then flowers, you can pick these up at the local market and just arrange them yourself. They look like they came right out of your yard. And then one of my favorite things to do is go to flea markets and pick up little dainty little things like this to put in the bathroom when you're having company. This is one of my absolute favorites. So, you know, I always say on the Very Vera show, no matter what you do it in good taste. I hope you'll enjoy tasting all these dandy recipes today and come back and join me again next week.